What's up, everybody? Welcome to podcast now. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by a good friend of the channel, Degenerate Jay. We are here to talk about a little bit of Xbox news. And look, it's something that it's not like neither of us have talked about it before. It's not like the internet has never talked about it before. This idea of Xbox kind of slowly pulling out, right? Whether it's retailers doing it or whether it's, Xbox themselves or Microsoft. So we talked a little while ago. Costco obviously is completely out of the equation, right? And they confirmed it, right? They say we're just not doing it anymore. Now we have an interesting tweet. We have an interesting article to go over, but I do want to do a formal introduction of Jay. Great friend, does a lot of amazing stuff on his channel. Check him out. All the links will be in the description. Jay, I guess before we go too deep in here, just to kind of get your quick thoughts, in case anybody maybe hasn't seen, what's your thoughts on Xbox and slowly leaving as it is before we even talk about Walmart and Target?
I think it's really sad. And, I took a picture as well that I'm not sure if you'll show in the video or not, but I went to Target and this was back in August. They had basically nothing for Xbox, just a small end cap. I think it's sad to see because for us, we care about both types of game preservation and both options. And it's unfortunately something I've noticed is a lot of people on the digital side, for some reason, seem to not really want physical games around. We'll talk about the importance of them, why we like them. There's always this pushback. But for digital, I want that to be an option, absolutely. And, if you want Game Pass to be an option and stuff like that, it comes with its hurdles and its benefits. But I think more options for people who play video games or watch or buy movies or any of these things, it's always better than less options. I've never understood the people who advocate for less options. With these huge retailers and stuff, I get their cost cutting, but just the people who buy it, it's confusing to me why we've hit a point where this is acceptable.
Right. And it's sadly, I think it's another sign that, and I think we both said it, competition's good, right? Without Xbox doing competition, to PlayStation or competing, I guess would be the word, that makes PlayStation a little, more chillax, right? More willing to kind of sit back and just, not really push it. And I've always said, I think the strongest era really for both of these was the 360 PS3. You had PlayStation falling behind massively, right? Really losing, I guess, for the only time that we've seen in these 4 or 5 generations. And what did it lead to? It led to an amazing era for Xbox, but the thing about the PlayStation side, who was on the losing end, it pushed them to do some incredible things that they never did again, after. And you kind of understand it, because after PS3, they ran away with it. They don't need to do that anymore. In that generation, they did. And I think we got some of the most creative things and just them literally trying as hard as they could for an honestly good reason, right? It was do or die for them. And so I would rather, I guess, long story short, I'd rather let's just have competition, versus, because that's how I kind of look at this, right? This is maybe another sign of Xbox just giving up or Microsoft just giving up. And it's not good for them. Obviously, we know that, at least in part. I mean, Game Pass could obviously keep them around. The play anywhere type thing could keep Xbox as a major player, but it's not even really just about Xbox. It's really about everybody else, not to make it about everybody else, but it's about pushing, the other. So one thing that I want to throw in before I do this article that we'll read. And I was mentioning this to Jay before we hit record. I mean, it goes to his point, too. This is not an isolated incident. Even the article will mention this being at other places. I mean, Jay's a great example, too, of just literally a random place, right, where Xbox is kind of pulling out. I noticed over Prime Day, and this is something that I've noticed multiple times but really paid attention to now. Normally when there's these sales, right, games are 30, 40, 50% off, there were multiple games. I mean, I can think of Infinite Wealth as the one main example, but there were others. The Xbox version was down 80%. It was on sale for it was $18, right? And then you go to PlayStation, the PS5, physical, copy that you'd be getting from Amazon, and it was 35. So it was still discounted, right? It was still Prime Day. There's still all these discounts. But Xbox was done far more than PlayStation. So I just think, because we're going to talk about this article, and they could just be isolated incidents, all that jazz. But I think there is enough signs out there that, and again, even through some of these discount things, Xbox physical games tend to go on sale more than PlayStation ones. Xbox tends to get less physical games when these limited run things come out, right? They're mainly PlayStation and Switch. Sometimes not even PlayStation, sometimes only Switch, but rarely Xbox. So that's just something to, yeah, you might say it's a one and done thing, but you can see it even just in how sites, you know what I mean? Sites are selling these things. So let's just read over the quick article, and I want to have Jay take the wheels here. So coming from Shinobi, Target and Walmart seemingly pulling Xbox stock from store shelves. And when you go into the article, honestly, it's pictures. It's people noticing these trends. It's not just one or two, by the way. It's multiple people taking pictures of these end caps and just these other things that there's less or there's none, Xbox related merchandise there. And then even at the end of the article, the gamer talks about that they did just like a fun little exercise going online, and they would go online to look at the stock of these things. And like, I think they say Target stock in Kansas City, it says there's only one Series S available, and there's limited stock on several games, whereas PlayStation and Switch, it's fine. Then they just picked a random place in Washington Square, which shows the same thing. Again, less Xbox things. They might say there's only 5 of them versus far more, PlayStation and Switch. So I've talked enough, Jay. What do you think about this exiting the retail market and what it means? Or I guess if you believe, do you think these are isolated incidents, or if you think this is kind of just like what's actually happening?
I think things come and go in waves, and you can never fully predict how it'll work. Like, for example, CDs, you can still buy them in certain places for huge artists like Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter, occasional rap stuff. Like if Kanye came out with a new album, I'm sure Target would have it, despite all of the things he's done. You see those huge names with CDs, they still pop up, but they never really had a huge renaissance. They're just still on a slow death, right? But vinyl, vinyl records, they were gone, gone for years, and now they're back and they're popular again. And so it's kind of weird to see this kind of stuff. Like, I don't think it's an isolated incident, but I do think that there will always be some kind of market for physical, whether it's limited run games, whether it is, the more niche movie sellers where they will have like online retailers. Some of them are escaping the names are escaping me right now, but they'll be like an online retailer. They'll be like, oh yeah, we're selling this movie, it's reprinted from 1980, it's on a physical Blu-ray, and you can only buy it here. I think that will always be a thing, but I really do think that the age right now of physical games for mass consumption is ending. It's just ending slower for some groups than others. And Xbox, I think they expedited it, and they don't care they expedited it, but they really made it faster with Game Pass. The fact that when I do research on a video now, if I look up a video game, one of the first top 4 results is always like Silent Hill F. I looked it up for to fact check something for myself for a video I made, and one of the top ones is I typed "is Silent Hill F" and then on Game Pass pops up as one of the first things.
Yeah.
And that's, if you start looking up new games, it's always popping up. People don't want to spend their money on games. They want to spend as little as possible. Part of that has to do with economic situations and everything. But I think now people are realizing what I said years ago, which is if you put all of your eggs in one basket with something like Game Pass, then when there's no more options, they can jack up the price. And look at what they're doing. I mean, there are countries where Game Pass Ultimate doubled in price.
Yeah.
I was being told even in my comments, hey, it's going up $10 a month for you guys in the US. It's going up the equivalent of 30 more US dollars for me in my country, and it was already that.
Yeah.
It's like they can do that now because people bought into their thing, and now there are no physical games. So the options are buy it digitally or Game Pass if you're on Xbox. And lo and behold, Game Pass is now going up as physical's dying. And it's like, who called that? I don't want to be full of myself, but we called this years ago. You and I both were talking about there's positives to things like Game Pass, there's positives to digital, but these should be options. They shouldn't be the only option.
Right.
And now that, people voted with their wallets. So it's like, I feel like I have a right to complain about it because I did still buy physical Xbox games. I do still have a whole shelf of physical Xbox games. and maybe I don't buy as many video games as some people do because of my money situation, but I would rather buy things and be able to interact with it whenever I want, versus be at the mercy of Game Pass or Netflix or
Yeah.
Amazon or whatever. Um, but it seems like that is an increasingly rare attitude, even though then people will still complain when something's not on Game Pass or not on Netflix or whatever,
Yeah.
and they could have bought it. I don't like either attitude, like the customer is always right or the retailer is always right, but like the customers voted with their wallets, and now people are upset. I think what sucks is a lot of the people you see who are upset did still want to buy those things. Otherwise, they wouldn't be posting pictures of like it from Target. But you and I both know there's going to be a healthy group of people who are mad that options are gone, but they never supported those options. And I think for me, that's where it's kind of like it's a frustrating thing. There's a part of me who wants to say like, well, you get what you deserve. You guys made this mess. Like I tried. But then there's another part of me that's like far less petty that just says this is sad, and it just leads to less options. And a company like Xbox could easily keep making physical games. I mean, you even remember those emails. I think you covered them at the one point, or at least touched on them in a video where there were those emails where Xbox, like Microsoft, was basically saying like, well, we can just use money to push Sony out of the market and like kind of push ourselves wherever. This
Yeah.
is like a year or two ago, like the leaked Xbox emails. It's like Microsoft knows they have money they can throw around. They could easily keep making physical just for the sake of giving you an option, but they're not, and they're increasing Game Pass price. So it's like that's my rant on it. I want to know what you think, but for me, I feel like people created this ecosystem. Every time someone tried to say, hey, this is a bad way to go, they got ridiculed. It happened to you, it happened to me, it happened to pretty much any YouTube channel I've seen that promotes physical gaming still existing. And now people are upset about it happening. And it's like, where were you when people were saying this is going to happen? I don't understand why people keep putting faith in the goodness of companies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I try to just look for consistency in people. And I think one thing that was called out kind of recently, with the PlayStation third party kind of exclusivity and all that jazz. If you remember, a lot of like the big Xbox guys were championing exclusivity when this Activision thing was going on. The amount of people that were praying that Elder Scrolls 6 would, and that's Bethesda, but the amount of people that were praying for these games to be exclusive were off the charts. And then now, if PlayStation, and that's why even with exclusivity, I back off it a lot nowadays because I just feel like people are two-faced, right? When Xbox was, they were behind, and when you're behind, you try things. When these games and these companies are being bought up, people were saying, well, it should be a good thing, they'll be Xbox exclusive, even the playing field. But then, well, if PlayStation does an exclusivity thing to even their playing field, people get mad. So it's just, I don't know. That's why you can't really trust 99% of people online. They just kind of go back and forth depending on what is popular, their side, or whatever. Yeah, it's, to everything you said, I completely agree. This is kind of what happens. I think this was something that was rooted again in falling behind. I don't fault Xbox for Game Pass. I don't think it's the most evil thing of all time. It's absolutely got its strengths at a time of people not having a lot of money, which is like the last 6, 7, 8 years. You want a subscription service that you can buy. Ninja Gaiden and The Outer Worlds 2 come out in the next 20 days. They will be free on Game Pass, or you can spend 130 combined. Like, many people will take that deal, and I think they will be like right to take that deal, but with that comes negatives, like it's not just all positive. There's of course negatives, and like you said, to completely ignore those negatives and to say, well, this is the only way, it's Game Pass or nothing, and they've obviously tripled down on it, and that is all or nothing is what they've done, and they've been quite successful, by the way. Game Pass is quite successful, and they make a ton of money. And like you said, they could really operate so many things at a loss because they'll make it up in other ways, and they don't do it, And, I get it, I guess, business-wise, like why you wouldn't want to do that, but they could. They make unbelievable amounts of money on Game Pass. Do they struggle selling? Do they struggle selling games? Do they struggle selling Xboxes? Yeah, They struggle mightily. It makes sense for them to pull out of physical games. Like they do not sell physical games nearly at the rate that anybody else does. So I do get it. But at the same time, it's just kind of what we were talking about. Like, do you want to give up, or do you want to, give up, or I guess operate at a loss and have kind of that potential out there for people that still want it? I don't know. Like when I buy physical games, I have Xbox games. I have Series X games. I generally buy PlayStation, like PS5 over Series X if I'm getting physical. Digital would be a little bit different, but that's kind of my thoughts. Any final word you want to say before we wrap up?
I think the whole conversation is difficult for me because I get really frustrated, like knowing how many industries have been killed and businesses have been ended by like this kind of thing, like mom and pop game shops. They have to basically sell everything for way more money than it's worth to even afford to exist, and then no one wants to buy stuff there. GameStop, he's like kind of doing weird showboating on Twitter about it, saying like, "Hey, we told you to buy physical," but then they were some of the ones pushing like buying digital cards in their stores. Like like you said, the narrative changes for people depending on what's popular and what they want to say at that time. Their feelings changed, and that's okay to have a change of mind. But I think for me, this topic is frustrating when I think for the last, I would say 3 or 4 years, you've been much more into like older games, physical games, even doing things like your Back to the Past channel for podcasts now, and really covering that and hammering home the importance of options. And I know for me, for a few years, I've been doing the same thing. And whenever we do, there are those people who say, oh, well, you need to get with the times. Things don't need to be physical anymore, blah, blah, blah. But then this is what it leads to. It leads to less options. And then prices can be gouged if they want to. They can raise Game Pass. They can do whatever they want because, like you said, it's that or nothing. So they could raise Game Pass to 60 USD a month in America, and there will still be a ton of people who buy it because it's less than buying those games. Mm-hmm. And then Microsoft can rake in a bunch of extra money at your detriment, and people helped create that system. It's frustrating to me, I guess, to look at. I get the positives, but I wish that there was more foresight in this stuff where people understood that options do go away and then things get worse. Mm-hmm. And it seems like this happens over and over. And for some reason, it's kind of like that SpongeBob meme of like, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? It's like people don't realize it, and then we end up here.
Yep. It kind of needs to happen, I feel, to people in different genres or mediums in this case. It needs to kind of happen to you before you kind of see the good and the bad. Again, there's a lot of good. I've said before, like, I'm keeping Game Pass in select months to save money. Like, I'm doing it as a money saver. I play so many games that I can legitimately spend $130 or $30. And it's like, well, which one would I rather do? Clearly one versus the other. And that happens some months. That might happen 3-4 times a year that I could save $100 a month just by doing Game Pass. And then the other 8 months, I might actually lose money because I might not be using Game Pass and I might be giving them 30 freaking bucks. So, it's how people have the right to spend their money. However, I'm going to be smarter myself because I haven't been as smart. And I'm going to be smarter with which month, literally just be selective, which month I'm going to do Game Pass. But this is also what happens. I really feel, and I guess we didn't even really answer, well, we kind of did, like, is this a trend or is this, something that's, well, I guess, is this something that's kind of just a spark of the moment, or is this something that's going to, go long term? I think while these could be isolated incidents, I think there's more than enough. Costco pulling out, they're the third biggest retailer on planet Earth. I think it's going to happen. And I feel like these companies, or I feel like Xbox is on the way out physical, and they're just not going to be doing it anymore. Probably, you could probably set the deadline at the next Xbox. Like whenever the next Xbox is, there's not going to be physical games, or they'll be selected to limited run, and that's it. So I feel for PlayStation and Switch, you might have more of a chance. You might have longer to live, getting those games. So let us both know, in the comments what you guys think about it. Of course, check out Jay's channel. All of his channels actually will be in the description and a pinned comment. Jay, I super appreciate you being here, man. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I get a little fired up on this topic, so it's fun to talk about, but it's frustrating to live, and I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody watching, and we'll see you all on the next one.